Good morning. This is Norma Cowie for our Wednesday Norma Talks. I'm going to revisit a topic that I've touched on before, mainly because of what's been coming up in my work. As you know, I am a psychic tarot card reader. My title is Psychic Life Consultant, but I also do this transformation work. And for quite a while, I was having clients phone me up because they were feeling anxiety and they were dealing with anxiety. And the good news is that by the time they had some visits with me, and we transformed, thank goodness for Zoom, we transformed their energy and they weren't having that anxiety anymore. But lately, what I'm getting is people talking about anger, phoning up and saying, I'm feeling unusually angry. And I myself had felt that. I always sort of observed my own language of where I am. And my language seemed to be like a little angry and a little ticked off with things. And that's not usually my style, to be honest. Oh yeah, I can express and know and feel angry. And that's a whole story in itself because I was raised not to be angry. And I had to learn that anger was a natural feeling and had a reason behind it, which I will go into in a minute. But what I talked to this last person that phoned me about, she said, I think I need a session because I'm just so angry all the time. I'm just angry. And I said, well, first of all, I really think the collective consciousness is beginning to get angry. And as we will see when I put my little sad mad little routine up, which I have had up before, but as I said, we're going to revisit some of this, is that when the collective consciousness has gone from sad and feeling helpless that way, and then they go into anger because they're still helpless, but they kind of want something done and they're not sure what to do and how to do it. And a lot of it is because some of the changes that were going on. We've gone where I live, our province has gone from being fairly open to now where we're going into what do they call them? Mandated passports of that you've had your one or at least two vaccinations. And all of a sudden, people who are unvaccinated can't go to many places. They can go and get food because they can go here, they can go there, but you can't, there's lots of places. Me, the moviegoer, for instance, can't go to a movie, which doesn't sit well with me at all. And also, it's the beginning of rights. It's the beginning of what we have in, you might say, in our Constitution, of being able to have freedom of movement and freedom of speech and freedom of awareness. All of a sudden, that is disappearing fast. And so the collective consciousness, whether you've had the vaccination or not had the vaccination, whether you believe that it really is a vaccine or that it isn't a vaccine, doesn't seem to play a part, is that if you haven't had it, then you are the enemy of the state, unfortunately. That's what's coming. Australia is there. Australia, if anybody follows what's going on in Australia, you just go to Sky Australian News. They report a lot of very situations that are going on down there. But in the meantime, many of our provinces, I think there's 3 now, are saying the same thing. Now, on Monday, we start that here. And so that is a lot of us being restricted. Myself and other friends don't feel that we can take this particular vaccine because of what's in them. And because of what's in them is going to affect us. And some people we know will die right away. And because of that, they are very, very allergic to a lot of the things that are in. So this is choices that we normally would have made and have no problem. But unfortunately, it is now. So we've gone through, you might say, the sad grief part of things. And now we're coming into the anger and frustration because what do? How do you fight the government? How do you fight the machine that's an operation? How do you fight misinformation? They say we have misinformation, but it seems when you look and you talk to the people that are not part of the machine, we'll say, is that you're wrong and they are right. And to live in a right-wrong society, to me, is being a little bit kind of weird. Anyway, I wanted to talk about anger primarily today, and I don't want to get super sidetracked into all the other stuff. So I'm just putting up my where are they here? Where is it here? So I've gone through this before. Over time, because when you're a reader, you find there are particular themes that people have consistently. And so you get to understand, and I'm always looking for solutions. That's what I've spent a lot of my life in looking, okay, this is how do I solutionize this? How do I have this work? And so I came up with this sad, mad, helpless formula because it explains what happens to us when a situation occurs. So I'm going to, because I find if you read it at the same time and you hear it, it can work a lot easier. So right at the beginning, I've got here, an event occurs in your life which overwhelms you and you do not know what to do. There is usually one or two responses. You will either feel sad, which is depressed, or mad, which is angry. In other words, either depressed or angry about the situation. Now, this will be fun to see if I can get this to move down a bit here. I tried a little earlier. There we go. Now, if you learn how to follow energy inside of yourself, and if you go a little deeper by taking a breath and going deeper underneath, you will find that you're actually feeling helpless. So here we have this helplessness, and then it goes either one or two ways. Now, I spent like some periods of my life depressed because I was taught not to be angry when I was a child. And when I was beginning to look at all my feelings and acknowledge them, the hardest one I had to do was hatred, actually. But the next one was about being angry, because anger was not appreciated in my household at all. And it usually took a lot to make me angry. It was easier for me to be depressed and kind of down rather than being angry and mad. And so consequently, what happens, I spent a lot of years not really knowing what was going on. But then when I learned how to follow an energy or to follow the words down, when I ran into helplessness. When you feel helpless, what do you do? And that is one of where a lot of us get stuck. What do we do? Especially if we feel there's nothing much that we can do. Now, if you are still going further down, and if you reach beneath the helpless feeling, you will basically feel that you're unworthy of having it be, that's the situation at the top, any different. Now, how many times this happens? Often. And, especially I think it doesn't happen a lot to me at this time in my life, but it used to happen a lot with my business and with my kids, with my husband at the time, and two of them. So consequently, it's like, how do you get to the feeling of unworthiness, to feel unworthy? Why do we feel unworthy? And basically, the next line says, if you go beneath the unworthy, you will find a source energy of love. And a lot of the reasons we feel unworthy is because we're not connected to the universal love energy. We're not connected to that energy that is there. And it is only by being able to reach into that love energy and connecting to it to recognize that we're not unworthy, but we are in fact worthy. And when you realize that, and I've got written down here, by taking the UN away from unworthy, you will realize you are worthy and therefore not helpless. And that is the magic point. Excuse me. That is the magic point. When you realize you're not helpless, then you can choose to make a different decision about the event, the situation, or whatever it is originally that starts a sad, mad routine. And you can deal with appropriately for yourself. And once you do that, you are in command of your life. Now, what I've got down here in italics is, When you accept the situation 100%, you are free to make a different decision, but it needs to be accepted 100%. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. And that's why a lot of my clients, when I discuss this with them, because they get stressed out about whatever the situation is, they're going to be in some depression or they're going to be super angry, and they don't know what to do. The key is to accept, and I wanted to leave that up here, to accept the situation 100%. That means you accept it in its entirety. This is how it is. When you accept it 100%, you can make a different decision. And when you make a different decision, I'm just going to put myself back on a full screen here. When you make a different decision, you can have a whole different action. All of a sudden, you're not sad or mad anymore. But the key is this word called acceptance. One of the hardest things I really feel that we humans have, how do we accept something 100%? How do we accept it when we don't like it or we want it? But by accepting it, we let ourselves get free, actually, because we can choose a different way of responding. We don't have to be sad. We don't have to be mad. We can take action, or we can choose to do no action if that's what you decide. But it's like it's a freedom that comes because you're aware, I do not like this, but I know I am worthy to accept it, to know it, because I know that universal love force is there, it supports me, and I can choose how I want to respond. And that's, again, the choice. When we don't feel that we have a choice, that very often puts us into that anger mode, even if we don't usually go there. Or we can get super depressed, and that's what I know is happening a lot with our younger people, because didn't go to school last year. They're starting now. A lot of the schools, apparently, my granddaughter is in college, and apparently my son was telling me, I'm really hoping that they stay open so that you can attend in person, because many of the colleges are already going into Zoom classes. Well, this is, I'm very lucky. Around me here, I have several friends that live in my vicinity that I can meet with and talk with, and we can be with that and with people. But a lot of people are so isolated right now. When we're in sort of lockdowns and you can't move around wherever, you can't see the people that you care about. We have people die without their families. We had other people who had their parents dying and they couldn't get to them. And what happens to that whole structure inside is you get into that sad, mad place and you don't know where to go, because you forget that you're supported by the universal love force. And if you just accept, this is the situation, what do I choose to do about it? 100%, that acceptance. Acceptance is huge when it comes to grief. When it comes to upsetness of any kind, eventually we have to accept it 100%. This is what it is. Now, what do you choose to do? And so we're talking about choice. How do we choose? Sometimes we can't do anything about things. Sometimes we can. And sometimes it's just a matter of shifting the mental element of where we are. This is about victimhood. Are we victims? Or are we whole beings that can choose direction that we want to go in, can choose what we are wanting to do? Sometimes we have to accept these limitations that are being put upon us. And in accepting that gracefully, I'm laughing at that because I don't always accept them gracefully personally, is that we then can choose how do we respond to that in an effective way for our own well-being. Because number one, we have to take care of ourselves. Number one, we have to know that the universe still loves us no matter what's happening else on other elements, that you're loved unconditionally. And I think if enough people really understand that, they can move mountains. I'm not a real Bible person, but one of those that often stayed with me was when Jesus said, if you have the faith of a grain of a mustard seed, you would say to that mountain, come hither, or something like that, and it would come. I believe that. I've had that I've created things like that when I had such solid belief. And I call it a knowingness that comes in. It's a knowingness inside. You just know this is going to be the reality, and it would happen. But I'm like everybody else. I forget. I forget to have that amount of faith that is actually a little grain of mustard seed, which is pretty tiny. We just need to have that faith. And I work with people on having faith and trust in life. And sometimes it's really hard for their systems to really understand that there is faith. And it's a good reminder for me as I get to speak with you to go back to what my faith is. What do I really believe? Do I really believe that the dire, the horror, the horrible scenarios that could happen are going to happen? Or am I going to believe in miracles? Am I going to believe that miracles can happen? Because I do believe in miracles because they've happened in my life personally. And why can't they happen in a bigger scale? Why can't they happen where all of a sudden everything turns around and we have a lot more freedom and we have a lot more joy and we have a lot more happiness and we can travel wherever we want to again with ease and grace? Maybe I'm an optimist, who knows? But I do know this, that if you are feeling depressed, if you are feeling angry, that's that sad mad, go for what is really making you feel helpless. That is one way of being able to get to the point where you know what it is you're really working against. It's not just up out here. It's just, that's a situation. But what are you feeling in here? Do you have the faith and trust? Do you have the awareness of how things are? Do you know that you're loved unconditionally by the universal love force, which comes from the Earth Mother? It is there for us to use, and we need to be using it. So there's all these things to consider as we're going now more from sad into anger and more into that frustration. And unfortunately, a lot of people will strike out in anger rather than be contained. They may speak their truth, but they'll be more. Anger produces always not a great result. But it's better. But hey, what's the other? We get depressed and then people do other things. So this is a time period, I think, for us to look back and really realize this is all about helplessness. This is all about us, humanity, feeling helpless, not knowing what to do, waiting for something to come along and miraculously change everything. But it's us that need to change within. It's us that have to go inside and realize, how do we really want our world? And have faith in that. Even though we don't know the answers, even though we can't see how that could possibly happen. Miracles occur when this collective consciousness gets aware enough. The key is to be aware and to know that your thought counts, because your thought goes out into the collective consciousness. And if you're feeling helpless, believe me, your thought is going to be confusing, weak, but if you have conviction, if you have that knowingness, I am loved and we deserve to have this light and love within our lives, that collective conscious will move out of anger into more joy. So that's my thought for this week, is to begin to take a look and accept 100% that you're connected. And even though you may not like the situation externally, keep your thoughts strong in that lovingness of knowing miracles do occur, and have faith in that. So I wish you well. Thank you all for your listening. Thank you for your subscriptions. Thank you for getting in contact with me through my website, normacowie.com. And I really, really wish you a great week. Bye.